Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Straight Science. Straight Science is an evening science seminar series put on by University of Alaska Fairbanks Northwest Campus in Nome, and also University of Alaska Fairbanks Alaska Sea Grant, also in Nome. And tonight you're in the home office. Both Alaska Sea Grant and Northwest Campus, we are public servants of the Bering Strait region. We serve all peoples of the Bering Strait region, which is the homeland and waters of the Inupiaq, St. Lawrence Island Yupik, and Central Yupik peoples. Now, tonight we've got a little bit of a different straight science, and we're glad everyone's able to make it in through the firewall, which I am clicking on trying to multitask here. And tonight's speaker is Colonel Patrick Collins. He is, well, first I'll say he's going to give his briefing, and then he's going to open it up for questions. So hold your questions to the end. And Colonel Patrick Collins, so we're not really familiar with, at least I'm not, with SOCCOM. So that is the United States Special Operations Command, which is and I'm going to have to read this because I am way out of my, this isn't about belugas. This is a unified combatant command that oversees special operation forces from the Army, Air Force, Navy, and Marine Corps. So this is like the elite. The command is part of the Department of Defense. Colonel Patrick Collins is the Special Operations Command North Director of Operations. He is responsible for the planning and execution of strategic Defense Department objectives and U.S. Northern Command's theater-wide special operations, exercises, and activities within the North American area. Colonel Collins supervises and develops the Operations Joint Directorate, the joint group, which comprises of non-commissioned officers, field grade officers, civilian, and staff personnel. So also, Colonel Collins is calling us from Colorado. So it's already late where he is, and he's taking time out at a very late part of the day to talk with us all. We are really grateful, and we hope that, I'm sure we're a little bit of a different public than the Department of Defense is used to dealing with in the continental United States, as we are on the maritime boundary with the Russian Federation, and we have a long history of living and working and the good and bads of being close neighbors. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to you, Colonel Collins, and we're so grateful you're here to talk more about Operation Polar Dagger and the special operation forces that are in the Bering Strait region now. Thank you so much.
Yeah, so thank you very much for having me, and thank you for that introduction and giving me the opportunity to speak with you all this evening. And I'm really excited to talk to you guys about some of the stuff that Special Operations Command North is doing up in the Arctic, and some things that we have planned for the future. So what I really want to do, and I realize the audience is pretty wide here, so I want to start by telling you guys a little bit about Special Operations Command North, and we shorten that to SOCNORTH. That's kind of the moniker that we go by there. But when you look across the Department of Defense really breaks down the world into 6 geographic combatant commands, and they primarily lie along continental lines, right? So you have North America, which we call Northern Command. You have South America, which we call Southern Command. European Command, obviously, is Europe. You have Central Command, which is the Middle East. You have Africa Command, AFRICOM. And then you also have Indo-PACOM, which is essentially Asia. And so each one of those geographic combatant commands has a theater special operations command that is subordinate to it, right? And those theater special operations commands, we are one of them, Special Operations Command North, obviously aligned to the Northern Command. We command and control all of the special operations operations, activities, and exercises throughout that area. And so really my job as the director of operations is to plan those and then also ensure the successful execution of all those things. And obviously for us in the Northern Command area, the Arctic is of great importance. Um, we are a relatively new Theater Special Operations Command, and I say new, but that's in kind of like government terms. We're about 14 years old, and we were established in order again to provide command, control, and coordination of special operations and to generate options in support of counterterrorism and counter narcotics throughout the Northcom area. But as threats have evolved and as threats have changed, our our um, our requirements and our mission has changed as well. And so now, really, what we're doing and what we're focused on is generating effects below the level of conflict, and that's really, when you look at when we talk about effects below the level of conflict, what we're really focusing on is activities that are conducted by our competitors in order to increase their influence and increase their control of a region. And so, what we want to do is try to counter that, obviously, in order to protect our homeland. And then we also like to conduct day-to-day campaigning. And when we say campaigning, what we're talking about is logical sequencing of events in order to achieve an objective or a goal. And so, what we focus on day to day, what that really means when you see us out there is we try to build partner nation special operations capability and capacity. We like to improve our interagency and our government partners' shared operational understanding of security challenges facing the U.S. And then we also like to provide critical capabilities to civil authorities at times of crisis. And throughout the Northern Command on any given year, you see a lot of that happening by way of hurricanes. We've had a spate of a lot of fires recently, and that's not necessarily something that we focus on from a special operations standpoint, but it is something that our parent headquarters, Northcom, focuses on a lot. But again, our job is to make sure we provide Northcom linkage to all of special operations enterprise, and we pride ourselves on the relationships that we've developed internationally with allies and partners, and our deep understanding of trans-regional environments, so threats that move really across the world, and you see that quite a bit as well, where a threat may emanate somewhere in Europe or in Africa, but somehow it ends up in South America or even occasionally into the North American enterprise as well. And so our mission is to plan and execute special operations to detect, deter, and disrupt threats throughout the Northcom area of responsibility and generate positions of advantage for the nation. And if you look at special operations throughout our history, we've always sort of been whatever it is that our nation is needed us to be, and we really pride ourselves on the agility that we have and our ability to respond to a lot of threats. And that certainly happened over the past few years with our interest in the Arctic, because again, you look from 2001 all the way up until about 2019, 2020. We were hyper focused on counterterrorism, and obviously the areas where those threats emanated a lot in the Central Command area and the AFRICOM command area. And so when we started pivoting to global competition or great power competition, really we realized how important the Arctic is. It was never a secret, but we did, from a special operations perspective, somewhat have to put our ability to operate there on the back burner while we did what our nation asked us to do. So we look at the northern North American Arctic as a very critically important area within our AOR, and we like to make sure that we not only retain the ability to deploy there very rapidly, but also that we're able to deploy there and we're able to not only survive but thrive throughout that AOR. And so when you see us up there, specifically Special Operations Forces, I think many of you know we do a lot of integration and a very deep coordination with the local populace, and we do that in order to learn the different lessons from you all in how to become uh, as much of an expert as we can in that area, fully realizing that not having a persistent presence up there is really to our detriment. Getting up there episodically is good, but it's not great and it's not optimal. And so, that is definitely something that we're looking at as we move forward. But as we plan our operations throughout the Northcom AOR, we really like to divide it up. And thanks, Steve, for putting that definition of AOR there in the chat. Into three bands, and the first, the top band is obviously our northern band, which includes, the Aleutian Islands, Alaska, Canada, all the way out to the Greenland, Iceland, UK gap. And we focus that on what we deem as the Pan-Arctic approach, and really what we try to focus on. And I talked about the wide expanse of our northern band, but really we're very, very focused in the North American Arctic and in Alaska and the Aleutian Island chain. But what we like to focus on there is making sure that we can characterize malign activity, that we can contest global choke points, and that we're demonstrating our ability to contest some of those choke points, and that we're also increasing our awareness of what is happening throughout that area. And myself and Gay were talking, right before we started this session about some of the ADIS incursions with Chinese and Russian aircraft, some of their combined patrols that Russian and Chinese maritime forces are conducting, and kind of the level of activity that happens out there. And we talk about how we try to enable integrated deterrence in cooperation with our Indo-PACOM brothers and sisters out there and our European Command friends, in order to ensure that we have a combined approach to this problem. Because special operations, very small portion of the Department of Defense. We're only about 5% of that total joint force, and so we try to have an outsized impact, but we're not naive enough to believe that we're going to be able to solve any of these problems on our own. So we, the old saying, it takes a village, right? And we have to be able to cooperate not only on the military side, but also with our federal, local law enforcement partners like you all, um, and again, our Alaskan Native tribes. And we try very, very hard to ensure that we take a very combined approach to the problem. I just want to touch on our other two bands real quick, and then I'll move on to a little bit more about the Arctic. But like I said, we break our area up into three bands. We have the northern band, Aleutian Islands Range to the GI-UK Gap. We have our Central Band, which is essentially the continental United States. And we're Department of Defense. We're not local or federal law enforcement. So we have very well defined restrictions and limitations on things that we can do on U.S. territory. So what we try to make sure we're able to provide is specialized support to federal law enforcement if they request it, if they need it. And then we also make sure that we collaborate with the intelligence community to leverage everybody's capability towards a combined objective, obviously, which is protecting the homeland. And then lastly, our southern band, which incorporates our southern border, includes Mexico, the Bahamas, Puerto Rico, the U.S. Virgin Islands, British Virgin Islands. But we really try in that southern band to enhance our collective security. We work very closely on a number of fronts with Mexican Special Operations Forces, with the Royal Bahamian Defense Force, Royal Bahamian Police Force, to enhance collective security. We always work by, with, and through, our Mexican and Bahamian partners. We try to assist them in whatever way we can by bolstering their capabilities, addressing those shared threats, and really building generational relationships. And it's interesting to see, there's very junior officers that we worked with, or even that attended U.S. Department of Defense schools with us, that are now very senior leaders in the Mexican military. And so keeping those generational relationships and ensuring that we always have that operational compatibility in case a regional threat arises, and we can counter it together, shoulder to shoulder. But what we like to ensure that we do is employ our special operations forces in a responsible way to ensure that we're conducting focused actions that create influence on behalf of the nation, degrade adversary capabilities, contest lines of communication, like I talked about with the global choke points, and then also enable power projection. Being that we are here in the continental United States, and Alaska as a very important hub of power projection, we want to make sure that we safeguard that, and that we're always able to use that in time of need. But I'm going to move back now to the Arctic, just because I know that that's of critical importance here. And so the Arctic, obviously, I'm preaching to the choir here, but it includes multiple strategically significant maritime choke points. The reduction in sea ice, means choke points such as the Bering Strait between Alaska and Russia, and then the Barents Sea south of Norway, or excuse me, north of Norway, are becoming more navigable, more economically and militarily significant. And the increases in human activity could definitely increase the risk of accidents or any miscalculations. And particularly who I'm talking about is with Russia. And since 2005, Russia has built their Arctic capability to really to a level to where it has the potential to hold the U.S. homeland and allied partner territory, such as Canada or Norway, at risk. And I think you guys, all you really have to do is look and see at the capabilities that Russia is holding along their Kola Peninsula, with their northern fleet, strategic nuclear forces, submarine launched ballistic missile forces, and then the new military infrastructure that they have developed there in the Arctic. You can see how important the region is to our adversaries. And despite the conflict that's ongoing in Ukraine, those forces are still intact. And so you also have China, who is increasing their capability throughout the Arctic. Uh, they call themselves a near Arctic nation, but they're investing in capabilities to exploit the Arctic for geo strategic purposes, and obviously that has an effect on our maritime environment, and the fishing and all the resources that that part of the world provides. Um, and so, as a result of this, uh, and the shift from the Department of Defense towards global competition, the U.S. Department of Defense, did publish 2024 Arctic strategy, and really, the gist of that is what are deemed the three E's. The first one being enhancing domain awareness. So really trying to understand what it is that's going on there, what our competitors are doing, what's happening environmentally, as a result of climate change, what we think the future of that will look like, ensuring that we engage allies and partners. And I want to make sure, I'm specific when we talk about partners. Uh, you know, we're talking about you all, and we're talking about the Alaskan Native tribes, and we're talking about the Coast Guard, and we're talking about local law enforcement, and we're talking about everybody, and then the last E is exercising a calibrated presence. And again, when you see us up there for exercises and for polar dagger, part of what we're trying to make sure we're doing, on top of building our own capability, is make sure that we're demonstrating to our adversary those capabilities and our ability to hold those areas and keep them safe. And again, what we expect of those actions is for the adversary to see, maybe we should think twice about doing any sort of nefarious activities in the Arctic, because special operations forces have the ability to rapidly respond. And not only that, but they have exquisite capabilities and exquisite equipment that they can do a lot of damage back to us. So, very big deterrent effect just by being present in that area. And we always try to provide unique expertise, capabilities, and access in the Arctic, and it strengthens our ability to campaign in the region. We have two primary, really big, special operations forces activities that we do up in the Arctic. The first is Polar Dagger. Polar Dagger is kind of our hallmark Arctic operation. We do that once a year. Sometimes it's once across multiple months. Sometimes it's just in a singular, relatively short time span. But we do it generally about the same time every year. And the purpose of that is for us to demonstrate our ability to rapidly deploy up into austere areas. And the very first Polar Dagger that we did, we actually went to the Northeast Cape. And it just so happened to be during the time of Typhoon Merbok. And so, as hard as that experience was, we learned a whole lot from it. And it was something that we were able to take a whole lot of lessons learned and apply them to future Polar Daggers. And so, we take every opportunity that we have up there to learn, not only from the environment, but more preferably from our partners, like you, from the Alaskan Native tribes in Gamble and Savunga, or in Nome and Kotzebue and uh, um, Ukqiavik and Tin City in Wales, and Little Diomede. So, all those areas, we learn a whole lot. And we also learn how different each one of those environments are. And I think that's one thing that's very unique about Alaska, is that when you talk to some of our other Arctic partners, like from Norway and from Sweden and Finland, they're used to operating in kind of one environment. Um, you know, part of the lessons that we've learned is that, well, Alaska is really, really large, and southern Alaska and Anchorage is not the same as the interior, nor is it the same as the North Slope or the Aleutian Island chains. So again, being able to understand that, work with our Alaskan National Guard partners and everybody there to understand it is very, very important. So Polar Dagger is the one operation. The second one that we do is Arctic Edge, which is an exercise. But we like to deploy teams, all throughout the Alaskan area, again, in order to learn and in order to test capabilities. We use those venues as an experimentation test bed in a lot of ways. Um, During one specific Arctic Edge, we conducted military free fall, so high altitude, low opening, parachute jumps with equipment over the sea ice north of Dead Horse. And one of the lessons that we learned was that the face masks we were using weren't able to withstand that cold. They cracked. Almost immediately upon exiting the aircraft. And so we were able to get new, polymer based face masks in order to help protect our operators. But it's those types of little things that are really helping us gain an advantage out there in the Arctic. And so very, very important. And we really, those are two priority operations and activities that we do there. But just in closing, I want to say that you know we have to be able to strengthen our ability to survive and operate in austere environments. And we honed our experience to a PhD level throughout different areas of the world over the past 20 years, and now we are looking to do the same in the Arctic. And our Theater Special Operations Command North, is hyper focused on that. And so it's a very, very important area for us. And we want to make sure that we have that expertise and equipment needed to overcome the challenges presented by the Alaskan Arctic and the high north. And each iteration of Polar Dagger, Arctic Edge, strengthens our ability to do that. It also strengthens our deterrence posture, domain awareness, and soft proficiency in the Arctic. And I'm not sure how long it was, before we ventured out into St. Lawrence Island in 2022. How long it had been, since a large military presence had been there. But that is something that we're very, very keen to ensure, is that we have that deterrence posture, and that we're in areas where our adversaries can see us, and we're in areas where our adversary can see that, okay, hey, these guys are integrated with partners, and they do have the ability to hold those areas and keep them safe. So look, I look forward to receiving any questions that you guys have. Again, I'm super thankful that you invited us here in order to talk to you. And so I'll stop there and hand it back over to Gay.
All right. Well, thank you very much. I'm sure we have lots of questions, but before we get to questions, or if you're thinking about your questions, in the straight science, this is the time, because it's never easy, even if you're SOCOM North. Maybe not. Maybe you guys know how to do everything, but it's always difficult to be a public speaker. I still get the butterflies for it. So we want to give a shout out and show Colonel Collins some love in the chat, to take time in what's probably the middle of the night for him. And who knows, look at that background. He could be in the bottom of a mountain somewhere in Colorado. We don't know. So we really appreciate your time, and we're really happy you spoke to us. So we're going to open it up to questions. So think about your questions. You can put your questions in the chat. I know I'll ask the first opening question. Is we learned about you in 2024. I know you've been in the region before. will you be back in 2025? Will there be an Operation Polar Dagger? And if so, maybe we can get you, more FaceTime, or if we see you. I suppose when you guys are really doing your stuff, we'll never know you're here, but because we just wouldn't see you. But if you are coming up, or are you coming up, I guess is the question. Thank you.
Yes, yeah, we will absolutely be there. In fact, we have a couple people that are up there right now, doing coordinations and talking to some of the Alaskan Native tribes. Again, to ensure that we meet their needs as we come up. But yes, again, every year we hold an Operation Polar Dagger, and we also hold an exercise Arctic Edge. And so as special operations forces will be in the area, we want to be visible again, because a huge part of these is the deterrence posture, and again showing that we're there. And so when you see the big ship outside of St. Lawrence Island, you see the helicopters flying around, or you see, operators fast roping out of helicopters on the Aleutian Island, some of the Aleutian Island chains. We want to make sure that, people see that, and they understand that, hey, look, like, these areas are within our reach. We will absolutely come there anytime, and that we're needed, and that we also have deep ties with the community, in order to do it properly. So, to answer your question, yes, we will be there.
You'll be back, and probably around the same time. I know you can't give us specifics probably, but seasonally.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, operating in the maritime environment, with we try to avoid the sea ice.
Bring your cable repair tools. Just a
Yeah.
just a hint.
Yeah.
With that, here's a question from Deanna Hacker. Do you plan to give us the heads up next time when you come, so we're not alarmed on what's going on and that it is a drill? Because we are sensitive to seeing, like I'd mentioned earlier, that when we see activity and there's no one here but us, it puts us in a different frame of mind. So that's Deanna's
Yeah,
question. Do you plan to
yeah,
give us?
no, absolutely. And so, one of the things that we take great pride on is our coordination. And we try to coordinate with as many people ahead of time, in order to ensure that there is a kind of a wide base of knowledge that we're coming there. Now, that being said, sometimes, um, one of the big things that we want to exercise is our ability to rapidly deploy that on no notice or short notice. So when we do those no notice or short notice deployments, typically there is not a like a PSA that's associated with that until after we arrive in the area. Now, when we're not really concerned about doing it in short notice or no notice, we try to give those press releases early with plenty of time so everybody understands, okay, hey, the military is going to be here from this state range to this state range, and everybody has it. So, yes, to answer your question, we do our best to ensure that everybody knows that we're coming. Sometimes it may be a little delayed, in that you may hear helicopters before the public service announcement comes out. But we try our best, realizing that we're not perfect.
It's hard to sneak on anyone in this region. You should ask your prior counterparts back in the 70s when they tried to sneak on St. Lawrence Island.
Yeah.
Formidable. Never weren't able to be a surprise. I don't think, but I better not speak out of turn. Any questions? Metcalfs, thank you for your presentation. Many of us are concerned about interruptions to our marine mammal hunting. We are highly dependent on them for our food security. Are there any steps taken to avoid crucial hunting seasons?
Yes. So again, a lot of that comes into the local coordination that we do for every operation, every exercise, and every location. Additionally, um, when we're operating in places like the North Slope, for example, we almost always have guides, local guides that go with us to ensure that we're maintaining the sanctity of sacred and religious areas, and areas of the environment where, you know, obviously, for a whole host of reasons, we shouldn't be out stomping around, whether it's environmentally or, for historic purposes, or again, religious and sacred sites. So we try to always make sure that when we're, bouncing around on the land, we have a guide with us. Also, from a maritime perspective, we always coordinate the dates and the ranges that we're going to be there with the Alaskan native tribes to ensure that we're not overlapping those hunting seasons. And then we also, for us, I don't think we've ever asked, to fire, for example, weapon systems throughout, the maritime environment. So we don't, want to do anything that disturbs the environment or the sanctity of any of the marine mammal life, knowing that, the local communities there really rely on it for a lot of sustenance. So we do our best to go out of our way. By all means, if you hear or see anything different, please bring it to our attention. And we will fix that very, very immediately.
All right. Thank you very much. Dean, then Ben, and then Julie, I see you in the chat.
Hello, Colonel. My name's Dean Stockwell. I'm an Army vet. So I want to say, first of all, thank you for your service and your commitment to the U.S. Really appreciate it. And I appreciate you coming out and talking to the communities. It's very important that you do that. I've ridden in my career on U.S. Navy submarines up through the Arctic. I've ridden on Coast Guard vessels, and I have an idea of their capabilities. Recently, I've been watching a lot of the convoys moving up through Alaska. These are Army convoys. And there have been some issues with not really having the proper tires and proper heating units on some of these units since they're coming up from the lower 48. And I would just ask you to look into that because I really worry about those guys coming up here. Just recently, one of the major highways was closed because of a rollover during one of the convoys. It's critical that you look into the equipment status. And if you could just kind of put a note out there saying, hey, check this out, I'd appreciate that for those guys. But thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Will do. And I can say authoritatively, it's not. Though none of those convoys belong to Special Operations Command North, but we will talk with our partners at ALCOM, at Alaska Command, and also 11th Airborne to ensure that word gets out. And I just wanted to say thank you to you, Dean, for your service and for everything that you've done. I think I may have toured a submarine once, but that's maybe as close as I've gotten, and it doesn't look like that would be very much fun to be stuck in one of those tubes for long periods of time. So, thank you for your service and for your sacrifice. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks. Take care.
And Dean, there's a comment back to you in the chat for you about that convoy. So
Yeah,
thank
hey,
you very much.
Dean, I'm Major Steve Gagnon. I'm a soft integrator at 11th Airborne Division, also a Ted Stevens Center for Arctic Security Studies Fellow for next year. So I'm a planner within 11th Airborne Division, and I was just following up with your question there. That particular rollover was a trailer rollover, I believe, on the Parks Highway in support of the Joint Pacific Multinational Readiness Center exercise that is ongoing at present.
Yeah, there have been a couple this year. There's one on the Richardson, and there's been maybe two breakdowns on the parks. But I know just in talking to some of the people, proper tires up here. Sometimes these vehicles come up from the south and they don't quite have it, and it can get pretty slippery up here. But yeah, I know you guys are looking into it and you're doing the best you can, but a little bit extra for these guys. I think they need it.
Thank you, Dean.
Yep.
All right, Ben.
All right, Colonel Collins, thank you for taking the time to speak with us. I know it's late there. So my question is, this is a region that's lacking in infrastructure like energy, ports, that maybe you take for granted in other parts of your area of responsibility. Operation Polar Dagger has been here the last couple of summers now. I'm kind of curious, what are some of those pain points, or more specifically, what are some needs that you guys have identified that you would like to have in this region in terms of infrastructure and capability?
Yeah. So, first off, thank you for asking that. And for us, what's interesting, the past two polar daggers, especially those people there based out of Nome, you probably saw a big, large expeditionary sea base, right, or what we call an afloat staging base. And one of the reasons why we have to have that afloat staging base is because there is no docking and pier capability out on St. Lawrence Island in order for our boats to operate out of. Right. And so, that is one point of infrastructure, when you look there that, you know, uh, we could use also, um, you know, and obviously, we find ways to go around it. I'm not, trying to sit up here and say that we absolutely need that in the future, but that is, when you look at infrastructure and how it can support military operations, that's one of the things. Um, you know, I know Gay was talking earlier about the Starlink system, and how that's relied upon heavily in that region, and we rely upon it heavily when we're there as well. And then also, when you look at the road infrastructure, just connecting village is to villages, a lot of in that area, you got to either take a boat or you got to take take a seaplane in order to get from point A to point B. And so those are all the types of things that we've noticed, and we've kind of made sure we catalog and write down from a military standpoint that, hey, if there ever was a crisis in those regions, those are planning factors that we're going to have to take into account if we ever have to be there. But for an extended and a long period of time. But I think Alaska is unique in that way, and part of what makes it tough to operate is also part of what makes Alaska so great. And again, that isn't challenges that you deal with here in the lower 48, right? Again, just very, very large appreciation for that region, the people that live in it, the day-to-day challenges that kind of have to be overcome, that like you mentioned we take for granted here. But yeah, those are just some off the top of my head that we've noticed.
And
Thank you.
thanks, Ben. Sorry about that. So maybe Stephen, if you can answer the question in the chat briefly, because there's someone calling in from Kodiak and they wanted to know who's operating currently in the Gulf of Alaska.
To my knowledge, there is a small Navy SEAL training base out of Kodiak that conducts exercises, and then as well you have a Coast Guard presence that operates out of Kodiak.
Big one.
Yeah, that is correct.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Julie, for the question. All right, my question, if I see no other hands up, amazed, is you said that earlier you were here in the region for Operation Polar Dagger, and my question, I have got a couple, but one is, what was the most unexpected thing about our region for you personally? Oh, unexpected, could be anything. The weather, just what did you aha for a moment? Huh, that kind of thing.
Well, on that particular rotation, I would say, the typhoon that hit Typhoon Merbok, when it hit
2022, I think.
2022, and yeah, and from my standpoint, when we look back at it, we knew that there was a storm coming. Most of the forecasts and stuff that we were getting was below the threshold of doing the damage that it did to our temporary camp on the Northeast Cape, and to Nome and all the surrounding areas that it impacted and hit. I would say one of the most and it wasn't surprising, but it was a sense of pride. Really was the response to it, and the influx of National Guardsmen to the area, the reaction from the community to go out and help, and especially to go to some of the um, more remote fishing villages that were really hit very, very badly by that typhoon. I thought was very, very impressive, and I thought it was a great kind of reflection of the community and the attitude of the people of Alaska. And so for me, I think that was the biggest impact that I had from that particular rotation.
All right. I see two hands up. Stephen first, then Anna.
Hey, sir, just quick question. So I know you've been around for a few of these polar dagger operations and of course Arctic exercises. Just curious from your perspective of your time there, what training partnerships with the Alaska Native communities do you feel have been most valuable for soft training development and really the mandate to monitor and respond to the nation's requirements?
Yeah, so I would say our partnership with the Alaska Native communities in Gamble and Savunga have probably been the most impactful. But I would also say that from our exercise perspective, we kind of have a persistent type of relationship with communities along the North Slope, and they provide us kind of like I mentioned earlier about the guides. But they also, provide us the ability to exercise some of our unconventional warfare skills up in the Arctic, and by that I mean, our ability to link up with local people that are willing to help, perhaps on a more clandestine basis, get us from point A to point B, help us, build auxiliary type support. If we were to have to operate there for long periods of time. So I think it's all very important. It's all been very helpful. But if I had to highlight one group that has been incredibly helpful, I would say it's the tribes in Gamble and Savunga and those local populations, because again they've bent over backwards to help us when they didn't always have to.
All right. Anna, go ahead. Or, oh, Stephen gave the thumbs up. Got the thumbs up there. Okay, Anna, go ahead.
You mentioned earlier the difficulty of not having a permanent presence in this region. Do you foresee ever having a semi-permanent or permanent presence? And what would prompt something like that?
As of right now, no, and I wouldn't want to speculate on the U.S. government stance on future posture. up in the Arctic. But I would say that, you know, from an operation standpoint, you know, that would be the best way for us to develop that level of expertise. Again, to be able to operate there, not just survive, but thrive. Um, it's incredibly difficult when you're taking, you know, a force, you're rotating them up into those austere and extreme weather conditions. They're learning a lot of things, and then they're coming back to the lower 48, and then maybe they never end up going back up to the Arctic again, right? And so that there's an aspect of where every time we go there, that there's a portion of us that have to relearn some of the lessons that were learned, you know, one or two rotations before. And so being able to, um, you know, have that permanent or a more persistent presence, even if it was very, very small, would be helpful to us. Again, to be able to become the experts of the environment that we really want to be.
All right. Well, thank you. And I just want to note the time we've got, I think you for another 8 minutes, and we've got Ben and we have Deanna Hacker and I've got one final question. Go ahead, Ben.
All right, thank you. And I forgot to identify myself the first time. I work at the radio station here, Colonel Collins. So thank you for taking my questions. The other thing I was curious about is what does the future of Operation Polar Dagger look like? I mean, currently, the kind of larger aircraft fixed wing thing is a separate exercise. Is there ambition to expand Polar Dagger to include other units? And could we see it become a bigger exercise in the future?
Yes. So that is currently a planning effort that we're doing right now. I can tell you, you know, initial kind of planning guidance that you know I gave to our lead planners. What we really want to see is more incorporation of some of our allies. And so we have that as part of Arctic Edge, that exercise. The last one we had uh, special operations forces from the UK, from Norway, from Denmark, from Sweden involved. And what we want to try to do is incorporate those same allies and partners at an operational level for Polar Dagger, right? And I think again, when you look at from a deterrence and a posture point of view, that sends a very strong message to our adversaries that, you know, not only can we operate and deploy there rapidly alone, but we also do it with a coalition and partners and allies and friends. And so, you know, part of what we're trying to do is incorporate them more. Canada is obviously kind of a, you know, the natural first uh, ally that we're looking for. But we do want to get some of our European partners out here as well.
All right. Oh, you got a thumbs up. And do remember that I know people think of Russia as the sometimes maybe adversarial, but they are our neighbor, and we do try to keep a good neighborhood for everybody. Deanna Hacker in the chat has, speaking of weather, given the severity of Arctic weather that could impact any type of response, what informs you in terms of weather forecasts? As we have repeated weather reporting outages throughout the region, and the lack of National Weather Service stations along rural Arctic coastline. And I would say not only the lack of National Weather Service stations, but oftentimes the ones we have are ill operating for a long period of time.
Yeah. So our best partner when it comes to the weather and the environment in Alaska, may be unsurprising to a lot of you folks, but is the Alaska National Guard. They are incredibly, you know, well versed, and they have helped us significantly to understand. Okay, hey, this is what's happening. This is the risk that's associated with it. This is what we can do. This is, you know, where we think we can fly. This is where we think we can't. But they have been incredible partners to us, and we rely heavily on them to give us some of those assessments and predictions when it comes to the weather. So from our standpoint, outside of kind of your National Weather Service folks, we rely heavily on the Guard. We also hear that there's a good weather center, or I'm not sure what it's called, but it's out of the University of Alaska Fairbanks,
I believe
and we're trying to get in touch with them.
you have the man we all turn to is actually in the audience right now. So that would be Rick Toman. So that's nice to hear you say that. So it sounds like the Alaska National Guard. Did that answer your question, Deanna? And then Rick, do you just want to say where you work and maybe?
Yes, it did. Thank you, Gay.
Okay, right on. And go ahead, Rick.
Yeah, hello, Colonel. Yeah, so my name is Rick Toman. I work at the International Arctic Research Center. I work for the group, the Alaska Center for Climate Assessment and Policy. But there are a number of people within the International Arctic Research that have ongoing collaborations with the Department of Defense. And so if we can help you, we have quite a number of people that are used to working with DoD in support of many different kinds of operations, as well as longer term strategic planning as well. So yeah, feel free to get in touch. And if I can't help you, I bet I know people that can.
Well, thanks a lot, Rick. I really appreciate that. And yeah, we'll definitely be getting in touch with you.
Okay, great. Thank you.
That is wonderful. So, Stephen, go ahead. And we're kind of getting close to the end here.
Hey, sir. Just curious to know, how do you think in the future that SOCNORTH could integrate non-military actors such as scientists, other particular Arctic governance bodies? How have they done it in the past? How do you think SOCNORTH plans to do it in the future to get after some of these operational and strategic objectives?
Yeah, so we've hosted in the past. I'm trying to remember when we did the last one. It might have been 2 years ago. But we tried to host a Arctic symposium to where we got a lot of the community of interest together in one place to kind of discuss some of those equities. We have leveraged the Ted Stevens Center quite a bit. We have also leveraged NOAA quite a bit in the past, and that's something that we want to continue to do in the future. And again, similar to how we want to begin incorporation of our allied partners into Polar Dagger, we'd like to see some more participation in some of the future events with entities like that. And again, I think there's a lot that we can learn from a maritime environment from the people that are consistently and persistently operating in that area. Coast Guard has been a phenomenal partner in that regard. But NOAA as well. There's a range of scientific expeditions and things that happen in that area, and you see things right when you're a part of things like that, and being able to understand what is happening in the area is a huge thing for us, and so being able to integrate with those partners to kind of understand what they're seeing, what their understanding of the environment is, oddball things that they may see here or there, that can be of critical importance to us from a defense of the homeland perspective. And so we're always interested in any opportunities like that.
All right. My last question, because we're at the 7:30 mark and we appreciate you being here. My last question is, as a region that's very unique, even by Alaskan standards, we are unusual. And when you guys are in the area, how do we help you help us? I mean, you're here to help us if needed. And what can we do to help you help us?
So again, I don't think there's anything necessarily specific, that we're looking for from you all. I will say that the support that we have gotten from the local community, it's been unmatched. And we really just we appreciate that. And actually, the patriotism and the sentiment that we get from a lot of the communities there is really it's incredible to be a part of. And so again, just being the great partners that you are, continuing that. I will say that don't be afraid to approach us. Again, if you see us out there, please, and you have questions, please come ask us. It's one of the reasons that we're there. We're not trying to keep anything secret. We're not trying to hold anybody at risk or anything like that. We want to make sure that we're doing right by the community and by the areas that we operate in, specifically, in Alaska. So please, I would say, if I have one ask, it's just continue to be you, and be great partners.
All right. Well, thank you very much. And hopefully we will see you either here or somewhere around and hear from you guys when you come up. I'm guessing it's going to be sort of same time as last year.
Yeah, I hope so.
All
We
right.
hope to see you guys at the VFW at Nome on Friday and Saturday nights.
All right. So I don't know if Colonel Collins, you and Major Anicelli can stay on for just a little later while we say goodnight to everybody. But for next week, Straight Science will be on the 30th. We're going to have we're helping celebrate the 100th anniversary of the serum run that brought the diphtheria serum to Nome and saved the children, and Balto and Fritz and all those dogs. And we're having a Straight Science that will be looking at the indigenous Arctic dog. It's a living history, and there's been research done on the genetics, the ethnicity, what is it? The I should know this. Ethnography. Can't say that word today. Archaeology and the genetics. And I believe they use some of our dogs, regional dogs from Shaktoolik as well, looking across the Arctic. So stay tuned for that. And that's to help celebrate the Serum Run anniversary that's coming up here next week. So with that, we'll say goodnight. Thank you all. And have a good night, everyone. We'll see you next time.